Welcome to the Ready Running Podcast. Drew and Rachel back at you. This is episode 3. This is really exciting.
Yeah.
What's cool to us that you will never know is when we make these, because sometimes we do it right before a podcast goes live, and maybe it's weeks in advance. You don't know, but we do.
Yeah, this one's probably weeks in advance.
Yeah, probably.
So, yeah.
We have a lot of topics we want to cover, and we're really pumped with today. It's kind of like going to be a shotgun blast of information, kind of centered around goals, planning, motivation, discipline, all these different topics that apply to any athlete ever.
Yeah. So we're excited about it. But first, do we want to talk about our own training and what we are doing?
Yes, my current training is stagnant right now because where I am right now is injured.
Yeah, it is tough, but this will be good for the podcast, just talking about motivation and staying disciplined even when you're injured. So that'll be something good that you can bring to the table for this podcast.
That is true, because sometimes you don't feel motivated, or sometimes you're really motivated and your body is like, no.
Yeah, your body is not motivated like you are. So
where I am, I was training for the Rock and Roll Half in California in December. Or no, in a couple weeks. Less than
October,
a couple weeks.
yeah.
In a week. And I have an Achilles calf problem. Probably just overuse. I was breaking in some new flats on my 17-mile run, which is not always advised if you don't train in flats.
Well, I feel like it was more than that. It was like a lot of different things that built up to this. I think you could have run a workout in flats because your calves were probably ready for that, but you also hiked Humphreys the day after and didn't roll out. So
that's true. In 72 hours, I ran a 17-mile long run at 7 flat pace. Next day, hiked Humphreys, which I don't hike very often, but I went with a friend. Shout out, Bo. And that ruined it. And then that night I did leg day. And then the next day we had a lake day where we swam all day, which you'd think would be good for recovery, but it's just like the motion of just like flailing my calf.
Yeah,
ankle.
your foot's always pointed, so your calf's always like kind of tight.
Yeah, so 72 hours, did a lot of terrible things on top of not stretching it and rolling out like I typically would. So I am definitely at fault for a lot of it. It was just unlucky timing. So won't be doing the San Jose half marathon like planned. Sad tears.
But you're still on track for CIM, and I think if your calf gets better soon, you can start training again and then be back on the road for CIM. So that's exciting.
Very true. And I got my confirmation in the email this week that I've made it into Boston.
Woo!
So, yeah.
That was a big goal also, and we can talk about this later on in the episode, but it was a big goal that he's achieved now. So I feel like it's really fun with goals. If you achieve a goal, make sure you celebrate it. Even if you're in a place now where you're not as excited or you're kind of down about something, it's really important to just keep celebrating goals and like things that you have achieved.
Yeah, that is a great point.
So when you got that confirmation email, I was like really pumped because it kind of came at a time where it's easy to be demotivated toward running. But hopefully that's motivated you a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
The nice thing with the 250 project is I have the benching 250 part of it, so I have just gone double down on my lifting.
It's going well too.
Yeah,
his lifting has taken off. So it is kind of a cool thing because when running isn't going as well, then lifting can go really well. And it usually does because it's easier to lift and gain that type of muscle and that type of strength when you're not running all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Crazy how much easier it is when you're not running 50-mile weeks to gain a few pounds and get a little bit more strength. So.
Yeah, and I think it's also been really good because it's shown you that you're on the right path when you're strength training and running, because sometimes you're like, am I doing this right? Because it's not working, I'm not really gaining that much strength while you're running. But now you know, like, okay, I am doing the right things because when I'm not running, I am able to gain strength pretty easily.
Very true.
So
So
some upsides.
Some upsides.
Yeah.
Amidst all of the sadness.
Yeah,
But
some tough stuff too. But yeah.
What would a challenge be without challenges?
Exactly. And that's another great point is there are always ups and downs with running or any like thing athletically or in life that you're trying to do. There's always going to be ups and downs with major goals that you're trying to hit. So don't get too down when there's down, when you could get really down, and don't get too high when
don't get
you
too
could
high.
get really high. Yeah, don't get too high.
It'll slow you down.
Yeah. But yeah, that was something, actually, advice that my high school coach gave me was don't get too emotional with things. Like, if you hit a point when you're really, like, upset or, like, injured or something like that, don't get too emotional about it. And also, when you achieve something, like, really great, don't get too pumped and, like, just over the top excited. Like, I feel like if you can kind of stay in that middle and still celebrate the great achievements, and you can still be like disappointed when stuff is going like not great, but if you're able to kind of stay more in the middle and not be too excited or too down, then you're able to like achieve a lot more and kind of just emotionally stay a little bit more stable.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Wise words.
Yeah.
Where are you in your training?
So I am still training toward Worlds in November, so that's coming up. I raced Flagstaff Sky Peaks not this past weekend, but the weekend before. So I did well in that. I got 14th, and it was my first top 15 in the Golden Trail Series race, which was fun. Those are like races that a lot of them are international races, or they have international athletes in them, and so it was really fun to like race that type of competition and be top 15 at it. So I was pumped with that result and still want to crack the top 10 at some point, but yeah, I'm happy with how it's going for now. And yeah, training is going really well for Thailand and for Worlds, so I'm excited about that. That's about a month away, and I feel like sometimes when training's going really, really well, I get like nervous because I think like, am I gonna get injured? Because I feel like in college I was fortunate and didn't get injured like that often, and then after college I kind of hit a time where I went through a lot of injuries, and I've been pretty healthy for like a good amount of time, but I don't know, I still feel like there's those times where I'm like, okay, I'm doing really well, like, what's the setback gonna be? And I don't just allow myself to be like, things are going really well, and like, that's good, and just keep building off this momentum, you know?
Yeah, which kind of goes against, in a little sense, what you said earlier of like, you don't want to get too high or too low. But there are some times that you need to know when you need to lean into the boost or not. You know, there's times where getting cocky or getting arrogant is obviously the wrong answer, and getting too ahead of yourself is bad. But there's sometimes, like you just came through a hard season where you were injured, and like it's probably good to be okay with like, oh, I had a great race, and I'm gonna be really pumped about this race so that I can ride the momentum into the next goals.
Yeah.
But you just kind of have to know yourself well enough to know how much you want to, you know, get excited with a good result, and how much you got to be like, okay, got to stick to the plan, got to stay focused, don't want to get ahead of myself. Because if you do, you might lose the bigger goal that you're like shooting for.
Exactly, and I think that's what my coach in high school was trying to say about not getting too excited about things, is like, it's good and you should celebrate the victories and stuff, but don't celebrate the victory for so long that you like don't move on to the next thing and like set a new goal for yourself. Because I think that could be really easy to do, to just be like, okay, I'm like complacent now because I've like reached this high mark and stuff. But I feel like it's better if you're always kind of like pushing toward the next thing, and like you did something great, celebrate that, then move on to like the next thing and like how you're going to make yourself better.
Yeah, totally. Which kind of reminds me of that podcast we listened to in Norway with Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Because he had kind of like controversial view on this, where he said like, oh, the reason I'm so successful is because when I accomplish something, I just like forget about it and move to the next thing, and I never get complacent. I'm always moving from one thing to the next, and not like, for lack of a better word, enjoying it I think eventually he circled around to be like, oh no, I do enjoy it.
Yeah,
And you can't just like lie to yourself that much.
Yeah.
But his point was what you're saying, where it's like, be happy, have the goal, hit the goal, but then instead of just being like, okay, I'm gonna just retire from life now for the next 30 plus years, it's like, no, be excited, but move on. The reason you accomplished that big thing was because you made sacrifices. So it's time to continue that and move to the next goal and be happy, but it's like proud but never satisfied.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a good outlook to have on it, and kind of a healthy balance, because I feel like we all just want to be a better version of ourselves and like to continue to get better and better and better. And so if you can do that while also celebrating what you've accomplished, that's great.
Yeah, very true.
Sweet. Well, yeah, we can start talking about goals, and I think first we should talk about like how to set goals and what kinds of goals to set.
Yeah, that is true. You may have heard of SMART goals before. I think that's like a general rule of thumb that we follow. It was funny, before the podcast we were like making sure we knew what it stood for. Because everyone, I feel like most people, maybe you haven't heard this term before, but SMART goal, it's like an acronym, it stands for something. Let's see if we can remember them.
Yeah. So the S is specific.
Have a specific goal. So instead of like, I want to be a good runner, like that'd be way too broad.
Yeah.
It'd be like, I want to be fast in the 5K. That'd be like the first step. You need all of the letters for it to be a SMART goal. But that'd be better instead of like, I just want to be athletic. It's like, what does that mean?
Right.
So specific is the first one.
Yeah.
You want to just go through these?
Yeah, let's do it. Specific is the first one. Measurable is what the M stands for. So that basically just means that you want it to be measurable.
Yeah.
And so for running, that's pretty easy because you can set time goals for yourself and like try to get faster in that way.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're not shooting for like, oh, I want to run a fast marathon. It's like, well, what is fast?
Right.
Let's have you run a 5-hour marathon, so you want to break 4. It's measurable. If you don't hit it, you'll know you didn't hit it, and if you do hit it, you can look at paper and be like, I hit my goal, it was measurable.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice too because those are relative to each person.
Yeah.
So that's nice too, because maybe your goal is to run a sub 4-hour marathon, but maybe your goal is to run a sub 3:30 marathon. So it's different for each athlete and where you are in your running journey.
Exactly, which is nice.
Yeah.
Which goes into A, which is attainable, which kind of self-explanatory. If I had the goal, I want to break an hour in the marathon. It's like, okay, well that would break the world record by over an hour. So maybe you should pick something a little more attainable. And this does require a little bit of knowing yourself and taking an honest look at like your skill level. Maybe it's helpful to have this conversation with your coach.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, what do you think I could do in 3 months when I build up to my first 5K? Like, what is attainable if you don't know it yourself?
Yeah. So yeah, that's really important. And if you don't have a coach, at least talk to somebody who knows running well, maybe like a friend in a running group or something like that, and they can probably help you out there too.
Yeah.
So that's another one. And then R.
Which is realistic.
Yeah, so you want it, I feel like this is why I don't like this acronym sometimes, because I feel like it's a little bit redundant, like realistic to you, that is
attainable.
Very similar to attainable. Yeah. And then T is on a timeline, so you want to be able to set a goal for a specific amount of time so that it's not just like an endless thing. Like you could say, I want to break 4 hours in a marathon, and that's great, but it's better if you say, I want to break 4 by the end of this year, because then you have kind of a deadline for yourself, and it's not just like, oh, eventually I'll break 4 in the marathon. I can do it 5 or 6 years later, it doesn't really matter, you know. So I think that is a really good way to set goals, just like having a deadline for yourself. And it's nice with running because races kind of do that anyway. Like if you sign up for a marathon, the marathon is going to be on that day, so you like have that, like that's your deadline.
Exactly. And if you couldn't tell already, like we don't memorize this. We don't, like when we create a goal, we don't like check off each letter.
Right.
But we do follow it for the most part. And maybe you miss a letter or two depending on your goal. Like for instance, With the 250 project, it's very specific, right? I have to run a sub 250. That's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic, it's all of them except for timed, because I didn't give myself, I have to do the 250 project in 3 years. Because in my mind, that took like fun out of it, and in my mind, I was like, man, it's such a big challenge. I don't know how long it's gonna take. And honestly, I don't really care. I'm gonna just keep doing it until I reach it or fail and get really old and slow someday.
Right.
So sometimes with your goals, you don't need to follow all of them, but if you have 3 or 4 of the letters, it will keep you on a good track.
Yeah, and I think knowing yourself is really important too, because I think some people are really, really disciplined, and maybe the time, like the T in the SMART goal isn't necessarily, like they wouldn't need that as much as somebody who like works really well with deadlines. And stuff like that. So I think for you were like, this is something I really, really want to do, and you know that you're disciplined enough to do it kind of no matter what. So for other people, it might be more helpful for them to work on a timeline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even for me, and probably you and most people, if you have a big goal, like that might be my end goal, but I'm gonna have a lot of small SMART goals leading up to it.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important, because like we were talking about, you want to celebrate the victories as they come, while you're trying to achieve something bigger. So I think it can be really overwhelming if your only goal was the 250 project, to bench 250 and run a sub 250 on the same day. If that was like your only goal ever, that would be tough, because it could be like 3 or 4 years before you reach that goal. And if you weren't able to celebrate the small things in between, it would be really tough to keep motivated and stay motivated for that. But if you have small goals in between, then you're able to celebrate like those small steps that you make on the way to a big goal.
Exactly. So let's give an example from your end. Let's start with a big goal. Do you generally have like one big goal? How many small goals, if any, do you have leading up to it? Maybe what's an example of something you've thought of in the past that maybe you achieved or didn't achieve?
Yeah, I remember in high school, like one of my biggest goals was to win nationals, like my senior year. So this was a while ago, but I just remember like being really, like I wrote my goals down for that one, and like I wrote out how I was going to get to it, and like process goals to get to that too, like lifestyle things like nutrition and like sleep and stuff. So I had like some process goals on the way to that goal, and then I knew if I wanted to achieve that goal, I had to like be top 10 at regionals to be able to make it to nationals, and I had to like if I wanted to win nationals, I probably needed to win my like high school state meet, Yeah. So there were like goals on the way to winning nationals. But that was probably a big goal in the past, where I really feel like I kind of set a goal and made some process goals to achieve it.
Yeah, which that's really interesting when you break it down, like a big goal like that, because some of those had nothing to do with running.
Right.
Like you would say, it was a running goal. It was it was measurable, attainable, realistic, timed, all that. Because you had a very limited, it's high school, you have to do it in those 4 years. So it was a perfect SMART goal, but some of the things that you mentioned, like diet, sleep, lifestyle choices, those things had nothing to do with running, and yet they applied to your future goal.
Right. And I remember, like I would write my goals down, and I still do this. I still really think it's powerful to write your goals down and be able to see them pretty often. So like writing them on your mirror, or writing them on like a piece of paper that you'll always see, or like taking a screenshot with your phone and making that your wallpaper even could be a really good way to just like remind yourself of your goals. So yeah, I remember like writing down my goals and like my process goals too. And I had like a calendar on my wall, and I like had when nationals was, and I had like circled it, and I would count down the days, so I knew like the timeline that I was on, and like knew what I needed to do. So that was just like one time where I was like, man, I was like really zoned in to like this goal, and I like did everything right as far as like having process goals and writing them down and writing down my end goal, and like it was on the door to my room. I saw it like every single day. So yeah.
Yeah, which seems maybe kind of crazy that you would be that focused, but it's like how many people, sports or otherwise, accomplish big things without that process, like without any planning. They just wake up and they're like, whoa, I have $1 million. How did that happen? You know, like I don't think there's probably a lot of top tier athletes, top tier business people, anyone that are like achieving greatness accidentally.
Right.
Like they're planning it and they're shooting for goals. And the nice thing with setting so many small goals is you can fail some of them.
Oh yeah. I had some terrible races. Like I remember regionals for nationals. Like I just needed to be top 10 to be able to make it on, but I think I was like 4th or something like that in that race, and it was like one of the first races that I had raced people like outside of the state of Texas that year, and it was just like kind of frustrating because I was like, well, if I'm like 4th in this, how am I going to be like 1st at nationals? But that wasn't the race that I needed to be like my best at, and my coach knew that. So we hadn't started like really tapering down. We were still kind of like working hard at that point. And then after that race, then we started the taper, and I started feeling really good. And that was a few weeks out from nationals. So I was really ready by the time nationals came around, but I had to kind of like be able to focus through the season and not let small things that like could actually set me back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which is nice, because if you put all of your eggs in one basket and only have one major goal and you fail it for whatever reason, it can be such a bigger blow.
Totally.
And the harsh reality is we probably both set really big goals that we failed at.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's not always a small goal you fail, you might fail a big one. But I would argue that even the big goals that we have failed, I know, talking from personal experience, I've never regretted it in the sense of at least I tried, I gave it everything, I had a plan, I stuck to it. You know, I could always think, oh, I could have changed the plan, this could have changed, blah, blah, blah. But there's not as much regret in that type of lifestyle.
Totally, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's lots of goals that I've failed, and yeah, I think you just kind of have to pick yourself up and keep going, and it's kind of like the same thing my coach from high school said, like, don't get too low when you hit a low point. So that's always important to remember. Another thing that I think is really helpful when you're setting goals and setting process goals and stuff like that is to work backward from the actual goal itself. And this is something I do in coaching a lot because I think it's helpful for me to like see when the race is and think like, okay, well 2 weeks out from the race we need to be doing this, like a month out we need to be doing this, and kind of work backwards like that instead of like, okay, today like the race is like 5 months away, and it can feel like overwhelming to think about like all the things that you need to do in that timeline. But if you can kind of break it down and like work backward from your goal and think about what you need to do to achieve that, then I think that can be really helpful.
Yeah, that's really big. Even thinking back to examples like with Boston, it seems so overwhelming for me to qualify because at the time I couldn't run 2 miles at 6:51 pace.
Which is BQ pace for
Which
you.
is BQ pace, sub 3. So in my mind, I was like, okay, can I run a 5K at 6:51 pace?
Right.
You know, like, because you can't not run a 6:51 5K and then qualify for Boston.
Right.
So there's some things that are, especially in running, very just like logical, mathematical, scientific, where it's just like, if you cannot run a 1:30 half marathon, you cannot run double that, which would be a 3-hour marathon.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
Right.
So stuff like that I take as very encouraging in the running world because you can be very measured and very focused. And in my mind, it was more digestible. It wasn't as overwhelming. I was like, oh, I don't need to run 26 miles at 6:51 pace. I need to run 3.11.
Yeah.
And then once I hit that, then it's like, can I run a 10K? And then I hit that, can I run a half? And then there's like almost checkpoints. It's like playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Right.
It's like, oh, I'm at the 5,000 mark. Now I'm at the 25,000.
That's true.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I like your mindset too because And I think that this works well for you since you are so new to running. But I am not as new to running as Drew is, so this doesn't work as well for me. But if you're new to running,
Is this my top secret formula you're gonna share?
yeah, I am. If you're okay with me sharing your top
That's
secret
fine.
formula,
That's fine.
they'll know.
Now they're gonna be amazing.
Yeah, I know. But his idea is if you can run like a mile at this pace, then you can run 2 miles eventually at this pace. Yeah, and then if you can run 2 miles at this pace, you can run 4 miles at this pace eventually. So it just keeps like building and building on each other.
Yeah, it's the theory of doubling,
Yeah,
basically.
that's what we're naming it. The
Yeah.
top secret.
The double
theory.
down method.
Yeah.
And this is honestly how I think. I know it's probably really dumb, but sometimes it's okay to be dumb if you're motivated and focused because it's helped.
And I mean, I think you just believe in yourself,
That's
which
true.
is cool. Like, there's a lot that you can gain from just believing in yourself, even if it's just like blind belief.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. So yeah, in my mind, I'm like, okay, one of my goals this summer was if I could break 60 in 400, because I'd been training marathons all spring, and I was like, man, could I get some pop in my step? And once I broke 30 in the 200, which is half the distance, I was like, okay, I have the ability. And this is how I think of it. I'm not like, oh, if I break 30, I'm gonna break 60. But in my mind, I go, if I can run a 29, then I have the physical potential
Right.
to run a sub 60.
Your legs can run
Yeah.
fast enough. They have run the pace to
Exactly.
like run a sub 60. Yeah.
And if I cannot break 30, then I 100% have no chance to break 60 and
Yeah.
double the distance.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I kind of use the logic side to kind of trick myself into thinking like, oh, it's as simple as if I can run half, I can run the full thing then.
Yeah, and it's worked
And it's
so
worked.
far. I mean, yeah, you've been able to get all the way up to like running a marathon with this theory
Yeah,
from like 1 mile at 6:51 pace.
that's
So,
true.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would deny that there's some logic there of like, yeah, you can physically do that. But obviously it could break down because you also go, well, if I can run a 29 200, then I could run a 58 400, and if I could run a 58 400, I could run a sub 4 mile if you like break it down. If I
Yeah.
run a sub 4 mile, I could run 130 marathon. Like,
Right.
you could go extreme. I generally just go up by one, so like a 200 to a 400,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
a 400 to an 800. Just double the distance by one instead of like trickle down the yellow brick road to greatness.
Right. I think it's, I feel like it kind of ends at the marathon though, because you start getting like bigger and bigger increments, like 13, like a half marathon, 13 miles to a marathon is like a 13-mile gap. But then if you double the marathon, that's like 52 miles or something. That's like another marathon distance in between.
That's true.
But I don't know. People have not tested it that as much. There aren't many like 50-mile races,
That's true.
or
But
as
yeah.
many as marathons.
Regardless if you go in as deep of the deep end as I do with this theory, I
Yeah.
think the heart behind it that could apply to more people is if you want to hit a certain goal at a further distance than you currently are at. Let's take the marathon. You know, you're training for Boston, you're trying to break into your category, sub 330, let's say. Like, you're going to need to be able to run at half fast enough. You're going to need to run a sub 145 to
Yeah.
have a chance. And when you're doing your workouts, when you're doing conditioning, get excited if you're running your 16-mile long run at that pace. Yeah, you haven't run a marathon yet, but you're proving that like you have the speed.
Right.
Like, all you need is just some more training and some more time. And if you're young, if you're healthy, like even if you're a little old, you still have like a chance to hit it.
Yeah, that's true. And there's some really good like pace calculators out there that you can use to like help you figure out like paces for different races that you want to run, and like different distances and what pace you need to be able to run those.
Totally.
So yeah.
Which, another thing going off of goals is tiered goals.
Yeah, that is a great topic, and also really helpful because I think you use it well. You kind of do A, B, and C goals every time going into a race.
Yeah, I like to say good, great.
Yeah, it's not really A, B, C goals. That's better.
Yeah, it's like a check mark. I don't know where I learned that. I think it's Adventure Time.
Oh, really?
I think like Finn the Human's like. But
That's
anyway, I like good, great because in my mind, I'll set a goal. Like if I was running this half,
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you my good, great goals. It was if I could break 120, that'd be good.
Mm-hmm.
Which good is what it says. It's good. It's not great, but it's not bad. So if I hit a good goal, then I'm like happy. I'm like, okay, that's the bare minimum to be like content with this and like, I could have done better, but you know what? That's good.
Yeah, and for you, that would have been a PR. So I feel like PRs are always worth celebrating.
Yeah.
You know?
To put in perspective, my PR is a 121.
Yeah.
And something.
Yeah. So good breaking 120.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For how long ago that PR was.
Right.
Because it would be kind of embarrassing if I couldn't break that now. But anyway, that was good. And then 119, breaking 119 was great.
Yeah.
Because if I could break that, like a 118.30, I think, is on pace for a 245.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to our other, it all
It
connects.
all connects. Yeah.
118.30 something is a 245
Mm-hmm.
marathon, which was my goal for CIM. So I've already, we think this way all the time without realizing it.
Yeah.
But you build these habits and they pay off.
They kind of stick with you. Yeah.
So breaking 119 would have been great because I would have been like, I'm on pace for CIM. It would have been a huge indicator race.
Mm-hmm.
And then sub 118 would have been,
Yeah, where you just kind of knock it out of the
Yeah,
park,
where
and
it's like,
it was
oh
like
my
an
gosh.
awesome day.
had a race that I didn't need to have. I didn't need to be that fast. I'm ahead of schedule.
Yeah, and I think with those goals, it's important to know that like the day kind of has to be perfect
Yeah.
for those. Like you have to be feeling really good. The weather has to be good. The course needs to be a course that's like a good course where it's flat and fast and the wind isn't in your face the entire time. Things like that.
It's
So,
yeah, it's like an almost perfect race.
yeah, exactly. So those are good goals because the good is like you can still be happy with that. The great is like, hey, that was a really good day. And then the is like, man, just knocked it out of the park. So you kind of have tiers where you can be like excited for what you've achieved on different levels.
Totally.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I have done that for years is because I think sometimes or some people you'll be like, oh, what's your goal for this race? And they'll have one goal. It's like, and they might not know really. It might not be a SMART goal. It might just be like I would like to break 50 in the 10K.
Yeah, and
That
it
sounds
could
good.
even be a goal that's like a goal where it's
Yeah.
like the day would have to be perfect
Exactly.
for you to be able to do that.
And it's
You
like,
know.
it's not wrong to hope
Right.
for that.
No, not at all. And that's why we have that like level of goal because like we do want to dream big and we do want to like believe in ourselves and stuff. But I think that there is a difference between like really believing in yourself and also celebrating like a PR.
Yeah.
Even if that wasn't like your most amazing day out there.
Yeah, it takes pressure off of you
Yeah, definitely.
by a lot.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't, we'll call it check mark goals.
Yeah.
So we don't have to keep making that up. But check mark goals, you kind of shouldn't hit them very often.
Right.
Like if you're hitting them, then they're probably just great goals.
Yeah.
And you probably need to dream bigger.
Yeah.
So like you said, it's kind of like elevating the ceiling. If you're a confident person, you know, it could be different than if you're unconfident, but like you want to barely ever hit your check mark goals.
Yeah.
Even qualifying for Boston, which was a big goal, and I ran like a 20-minute PR that day at Mesa, I didn't hit my check mark goal.
Right. Yeah.
It was
that's
just a
true.
great day. And it was genuinely great. I wasn't like, oh, I didn't hit the check mark goal. That was like a bigger dream. But
Yeah.
I would argue that if I didn't dream so big, I might not have hit the great. I might have settled for good.
Yeah, exactly. And that race in the last couple of miles, your like calves kind of were not great and stuff. And I think if you had like the strong calves to like finish it out as quickly as you wanted to, you would have hit that check mark goal. So that's kind of what we mean by like the day would have to be perfect to be able to do that. And I think that just shows that you set good tiered goals because that would have been a check mark goal day.
Yeah.
If you were able to hit that. But you hit your great goal, which
Exactly.
is great.
And I was close. It wasn't like the check mark goal was so far away. It was less than a minute off it.
Yeah, yeah,
So it was really, really close, but that's the point. It was just out of reach.
yeah,
There's times where you hit your check mark goal and you're like, whoa, I did not think I could do that.
yeah,
But that should be the feeling, not like, oh, I'm just hitting it every single time. It's like,
right.
dream bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's good. Because it is important to dream big while you're setting goals. And like we mentioned before, it's really great if you can talk with a coach or like a running friend that you trust and who kind of knows you and like what you're going for, because they can really help you set goals and set these types of tiered goals. Because you might not know yourself, like, what would a great race day for me be?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And back to what I was saying, like someone will say, let's break 50 in the 10K. That might be their checkmark goal, but that might not even be their good goal.
Right.
Like maybe that's setting the bar way too low. Maybe they could run a 40 and they think that 50 would be good.
Right.
Either way, it's like if they fail their goal, they're going to feel way worse than they probably should. Because like if you get out there, if you're running and you're trying at anything in life, good job.
Yeah, great job. Keep it up.
Good work. You know, like do something.
Yeah.
Like dream big for something and stay motivated, which we'll talk about in a second. But like stay motivated, follow it, and who cares what happens? You know, if you're giving 110%, no one can fault you. Most of us will be cheering for you.
Yeah, and that is what I tell my athletes, like pretty much before every single race they run, is like, do your best, and that's like all that you can do, so you can be proud of the effort, even if it wasn't a great day, if you were giving it your all, because like that's all that you could have done, and you can do that. So I think like for me it takes some pressure off, because I know I can give 100% in a race, and so I can be proud of that. So even if I don't hit a goal that I wanted to hit, like I still hit a goal because I did the best that I could.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That makes me think, in college we played the school. They were a really good school, and I was injured. So I was playing with my friend Spencer.
Shout out Spencer.
He's also a runner now.
Yeah.
Joke's on him. Which he's probably already laughing from all this Drew has weak calf stuff because of college things. But anyway, we were doubles partners in college, and we had lost to this school the year before, and we played them again and beat them, and it was a big deal because they were D1.
Okay, yeah.
And we beat them, and he didn't know how much pain I was in, so I didn't tell him until afterwards. It was my wrist, so I had my wrist band over it, so he didn't know. And he's like, how are you feeling? And I was like, I'll tell you after the match. And then we beat him, and then I used some colorful words to explain how much pain I was in. But then I had to play singles afterwards, and I knew I was going to lose. He's D1, he's better than me. Even on a good day, it would be a checkmark goal to beat this guy. But I was like, I'm going to play as hard as I can and try as hard as I can. I'll even start playing left-handed, because I would practice left-handed sometimes. And he killed me. But I will always look back at that. And even he was like, dude, that took a lot of guts to fight and not quit. And it's just kind of like, I could have quit after a few games, but he gets the satisfaction of beating me. But it was honorable in my mind, and I will not regret losing, even though I got smashed and probably would have even healthy. I at least could be like, I tried my best, I went out to do what I planned for, and then there's no regrets.
Yeah, I will say, I think you've gotten a little bit smarter with injuries, because sometimes I would say, I would not tell an athlete that was injured to go out and race.
It was senior year.
Yeah. But, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Don't listen to me.
No, but that is great. If you are that's the honorable thing for me to do, and that's what I want to do, then that shows good sportsmanship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
There's more sportsmanlike.
Exactly. Tennis is definitely different than running, because other people are counting on you. Running is different because it's if you're injured, the person you're hurting, the only person you're hurting pretty much is yourself.
Sure.
If you run a marathon or not.
Exactly. And this was our last fall season match in a spring season sport. So,
yeah.
It was D1. It didn't count. We were D3. It counted for our record, but that was pretty much it.
Right.
It wasn't a conference. If it was important, I would have probably just walked.
Right. Yeah.
But the point being is, you can have goals and you can stay focused, and even if you fail, doing your best, trying your hardest, having a game plan, that's enough.
Yeah. One thing I've learned from a coach in the past, Ryan Hall, shout out to Ryan Hall, He's awesome, and he helped me a lot with my mindset just when I was running and racing. And something that he would tell me is to set a goal that has like nothing to do with like your performance. And that really helped me racing wise as well. And so like I definitely had goals like for my performance, but I also set goals that had nothing to do with my performance and were more about like my mindset in the race, or like something that I could do in the race to like help me. So like running with like positive thoughts could be like one goal, and just like trying to like tune out the negative thoughts in a race. And if I like achieved that, then I like did something on that day, even if I didn't have the best race. I still was able to like achieve something.
That's big. It's like the concept of making your bed in the morning. Even though it's not a big deal, it sets your day of like, oh, I accomplished one thing, why not accomplish another thing?
Yeah, exactly.
And if you can control the controllables, like then you won't get as worked up about the things you can't control.
Yeah, because there's so many things in running, like weather or your competition, that you can't control. So I think that this goal was great for me because it was something that like I was totally in control of. Like the only person who could decide like what the goal was, and like if I accomplished it, and like how like I handled it was me.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Which is big, like you said, in running. Because I hear a lot of people have like place goals, which maybe this is a controversial opinion. I don't think that is as good of a goal as other goals. I've had them, and you've had them, and I think it's not bad if that's like maybe somewhere in the back of your mind of, oh, I want to be top 10 or I want to win this race. But here's a tough scenario is what if you PR by 5 minutes, have the race of your life run perfectly, and some person just signed up and beat you.
Yeah.
And just was faster. Like you ran your local 5K, and there were like 10 college kids home that weekend that just like destroyed you, and you didn't finish top 10, and that was your only goal. It's like maybe you shouldn't have put your weight in something like that. Like there's times and seasons where maybe it's more appropriate to put that on yourself. Like you're an Olympian at the highest level, you're trying to get gold. You know.
Yeah. Or make a team or something like that, and
exactly.
you have
or place.
to. Yeah.
Like teams that Rachel has made, you had to finish in a place.
Right.
And it's good to have that, but it's also, I would say, you need to have other things besides that.
Right.
That
can't be the only thing. Yeah.
It's like, I want to finish top 3 to make this team, but if I hit this time goal, the odds of me making top 3 are high.
Right. And that is something that's nice with running, because a lot of times, if you need to make a team or something like that, the times from like people that have made the team in the past are kind of similar, so you know like what you maybe need to shoot for when you're hitting those goals. So yeah.
Exactly. And inversely, you could win a race, have the worst race of your life, and no one could show up that day, and you're probably not going to be that excited.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
Just winning, just getting top 10. There's other things that are more important. Like, did you have the attitude you wanted to have? Did you have the right mindset? Did you have a good race? Did you feel good? Were you happy doing what you love? You know, like those things are more important.
Yeah, and those were the types of goals that my coach Ryan had me setting, along with some of the more specific time-related or place-related goals. So those are just really important goals, and they helped me enjoy racing more too, which is kind of what it's all about. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, why are you doing it? You know?
Yeah, that is. People don't realize how big a deal that is. Like, you really gotta love what you do. If you love something, you'll be better at it.
Yeah.
Or if you're really bad, you'll want to get better. You'll stay in it longer. When crap does hit the fan, inevitably, you'll stay in because you're like, I love this.
Yeah, exactly. Which kind of goes into like motivation a little bit. Yeah, which we do in a cover too.
This is our final topic.
Yeah, so how do you stay motivated? We'll go back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of the podcast. When you are going through an injury or you are going through a hard time and it's easy to not be motivated, how do you stay motivated?
Great question. Simple answer is I'm not always motivated. I love saying this. It's so cliche, but if you could pick between two people, like a super motivated person or a super disciplined person, 100% of the time, I would go with the more disciplined person.
100%.
100%.
Man, that's a high percentage.
Let's be honest, the best in the world are disciplined.
Yeah.
So that's a safe bet. But yeah, this is to say that there are times where I'm very motivated. Whether it be I'm doing well or not doing well, there'll be times, maybe it could be as simple as I see a movie and I'm like, oh, that's like motivating. Or I watch Rachel race and destroy everybody and I'm like, oh, I'm so motivated now. But then there's times where I'm not, and I'm just like, it's Monday and I have to go to the gym and run.
Yeah.
And it's an easy 6, which is the most boring thing to do. And I just don't feel like it. And it's like an overcast day, you know, like.
Yeah, it was raining today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you just don't want to do it. And in those cases, it is okay to not be motivated. That is when discipline kicks in.
Yeah.
And man, that's what you should be striving for. Motivation's good. It comes, it goes. Discipline should not come and go. It's you have it or you don't have it. And it can be stronger or weaker, but like you should have it and be building upon it at all times.
Yeah, and I think discipline is something you can build over time. So I think with discipline, it's kind of like if you've heard of setting habits for yourself and it takes like a month to build a habit. If you are new to running and you haven't run your whole life, it might take time for you to build that to be a habit in your life.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely comes at different times with different people and different goals.
Yeah.
But the point being is if you're disciplined, then it doesn't matter what type of day you're having. If you don't feel like it, that's a problem to a motivated person. That could knock out a motivated person.
Right.
But that does, who cares? You're going to go do what you're committed to.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter if you feel like it or not because you're disciplined, you're sticking to it no matter what.
Yeah. And I think it's really important too, with like motivation and discipline and all this, if you are new to running, to set some goals for yourself to make yourself like more disciplined. Like say I want to run 3 times a week or something like that, so that you have a goal that helps you be disciplined. And I think a goal like that, like I have coached some athletes in the past who are really motivated at the very start of training, and they're like, I'm gonna train 7 days a week, like all the time, blah, blah, blah. And they set a goal that's like way too high, and they get burned out within a week because they're trying to like run every single day.
Yeah.
And that's when like I come in as a coach and I'm like, okay, I know you're really motivated right now, and I want you to keep that motivation and like that discipline, and I want to set you up for success and not for failure. So I want you to just run 3 times a week, even if it feels like that's like you're holding yourself back. Like I kind of want you to feel that way so that you can like easily like set habits in your life that are going to set you up for success.
Totally. Yeah. Which is great because a lot of people do just get really excited out of the gate and want to do something. You've held me back a lot of times in a good way, where I'm like, oh, could I do like 6 miles at this fast pace? And you're like, let's just do 4.
You just didn't work out yesterday.
Just didn't work out yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's helpful to have someone like that in your corner that does believe in you. She believes in me more than anybody, but knows when to be like, okay, you are disciplined. You're maybe a little too motivated right now. Just stick to the plan and stick to the discipline side of it. And again, as the athlete receiving that, I could be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or oh, I'm going to just do it anyway because I'm just that tough. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's part of discipline, is saying no sometimes.
Yeah.
And knowing like when to save your energy for what workouts and what races and sticking to the plan. That's actually what motivation or what discipline actually looks like.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you can gain motivation if you aren't motivated in a time by just having like some rest built in. Like for me, I think like I took a rest day today, and I've been taking rest days on Mondays where I just don't run at all, and that kind of helps me to like reset so that I'm really excited to run the rest of the week. And then by Sunday, like that's a big workout day for me, and usually I'm wiped out after that day, and I've had like a long week of training, so I'm excited to take a rest day, and it just like refuels me for the week ahead. So sometimes I think if you're kind of in a spot where you're just like, oh man, I'm like really not feeling it today, and you've been really, really like disciplined, and you have that discipline in your life, it's okay to just take a rest and like have that built into your schedule as well. And I think that you can be disciplined with rest as well. And that's something a lot of runners, I don't think, realize, is that it takes discipline to rest as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like people say it's better to be 5 or even 10% undertrained than 1% overtrained.
Yeah.
Because then it's like burnout, injury, lack of motivation, which even if you are disciplined, it will suck. You know? Like being injured, I've not been very motivated I can't run. So there's been times of bigger time frames where I'm not motivated. And I have the discipline, so it doesn't really matter. But it's not as fun.
Right.
Not gonna lie, like it's more fun to be motivated and disciplined.
Right.
So you gotta put those rest days in. You gotta have those limiters, those speed bumps that are intentional, so that you can stay motivated longer, so that you don't have to run undisciplined
all the time.
Yeah.
It has been cool watching Drew as he's been injured the past couple weeks, because maybe his motivation has gone down a little bit, but you've been super disciplined, just getting in the gym and like really hitting the weights and building strength. So that's something that's really cool to see, that, you know, even if he's kind of set back in one area of his goals, like you're not just like giving up on the 250 project. You're still like working at it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. But yeah, discipline, super, super important. And if you don't have it, it's going to be a really tough road.
Yeah, exactly. You almost want to think of discipline as like compound interest, where it does compound over time. You know, you put in a little bit every day. You do the boring things. You show up. You do the easy runs. You do the lifts where you're not going to 1 rep maxes. You're not doing the flashy stuff. That is what the best in the world are doing.
Yeah.
Like the secret is that there is no secret, and that they stick to it no matter what.
Yeah. Another thing that could help to build discipline if you don't feel like you have it quite yet is having somebody to keep you accountable for being disciplined. So having a coach or like a friend that you always run with that like understands running and stuff like that. That can really help, so that you have somebody who's kind of in your corner rooting for you and like keeping you accountable to be like, did you run 3 days a week this week? Like I'm gonna see if you didn't, because I'm your coach and I follow you on Strava. So.
Yeah, exactly. Or just marry your coach.
Yeah, there you go. That's another way, I guess.
Big brain.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are great things. We could probably go into even more details, but I think we covered a lot. You guys can let us know if there's other things that you'd like us to cover in this topic or others. You can leave it down in the comment section.
Yeah,
hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, do all the things.
Yes, and also comment if you have a way that you are able to keep yourself disciplined too. That could help out other people that are reading through the comments.
Yeah, we gave you all of our top secrets. You know my deepest secrets now. You gotta share.
Yeah,
it's gotta
exactly.
go both ways.
Sweet, yes. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next week.